one thing. The Nazis had been evil, and Europe and America had done well to rid that continent of Hitler and his cohort. Though blind to our own partial answers about contemporary social change, we were, on the other hand, confidently in solidarity about the German occupation of France. I remember, too, that while roaming France and Paris, I would frequently find myself before some centrally located monument, maybe one that was topped by a stone sentinel, bearing an endless list of names of people from that community, many with the same patronyms, who had been lost during the great conflict of 1914 to 1918. The towns and villages and cities of that epoch had officially remembered every local male who had died or disappeared during that horrendous conflict. Standing before these sad memorials, I wondered why there were not similar monuments raised to the local casualties of the Second World War. Yes, in post offices and other official buildings, in museums and some schools, we find names of those affiliated with a particular institution who died during World War II, but more often than not, that list is tacked onto a First World War plaque or monument almost as an afterthought. Furthermore, the lists are for the most part composed of names of those who died in deportation, or who publicly or violently resisted the occupation. Rarely do you find lists of the region's military who died during the war. One senses the lack of a widespread communal and patriotic desire to remember, as if World War II had had a much more modest impact on national and local history. This should not be surprising. Even today, the French endeavor both to remember and to find ways to forget their country's trials during World War II. Their ambivalence stems from the cunning and original arrangement they devised with the Nazis, which was approved by Hitler and assented to by Philippe Pétain, the recently appointed head of the moribund Third Republic that had ended the Battle of France in June of 1940. This treaty, known by all as the Armistice, had entangled France and the French in a web of cooperation, resistance, accommodation, and later of defensiveness, forgetfulness, and guilt, from which they are still trying to escape. The word collaboration, the Germans first use Zusammenarbeit, working together, evolved into an epithet. One French veteran told me, with conviction, that it might have been better, at least for French memory and morale, had an armistice never been signed, had the French fought to defend Paris, then the Loire Valley, then central France, retreating if necessary, all the way to the Mediterranean and North Africa. But the Third Republic did sign this agreement, and it did agree to an administrative division of French territory, and it did legally vote to end the Third Republic itself, established in 1871 after an ignominious defeat by the Prussians the previous year. For the first time since the Renaissance, France in 1940 was a geographically incoherent nation. Footnote: the very northern part of France was attached to the military government of Belgium. The eastern provinces of Alsace and Lorraine, which Germany had assimilated in the Franco-Prussian War and lost in the 1918 armistice, were reabsorbed into the Reich. Sections of southeastern France were put under Italian control, but the most significant division was between what became known as the occupied and the unoccupied zones, which lasted until November of 1942. The northern zone ranged from the Rhine to the entire Atlantic and Channel coasts, down to the Spanish border, and of course included Paris. The unoccupied, Vichy or Free Zone, comprised essentially central and south-central France to the Pyrenees, including most of the Mediterranean coast. End footnote. This administrative and geographical division would be replicated as a moral and psychological division for decades after the war, as collective memory endeavored to rewrite history. In what ways did Paris in 1940 pass from being a city known for its freedoms to a closed, uncanny, unfamiliar place? What effect did the open-endedness of the occupation, the uncertainty of its duration, have on Parisian daily life? And how did this uncanniness affect both Parisians and their occupiers? Films and novels, memoirs and diaries, photographs and letters of the period all make some reference to how the atmosphere of the City of Light changed with the arrival of German soldiers and, soon afterward, of the Nazi bureaucratic apparatus. To the Parisian, the Germans might have been ethnic cousins, but they were not French, and they certainly were not Parisians. Not since the late Middle Ages, during the 100 Years' War.